Have you ever felt emotional or physical discomfort in your body and you just never quite knew what it is related to? You know, sometimes your emotional or physical pain can also be so debilitating that no matter what you do, that you can never get to the bottom of it. If this is you, then stay tuned because I will guide you through a powerful sneak peek of the Metaphysical Anatomy Technique session for free. Hi, my name is Evette Rose, author and founder of Metaphysical Anatomy, which is a book that is your emotional guide to understanding hidden messages in your body. And welcome to today's topic, healing trauma in the emotional body with 5 steps that you can start today. Now, as you are here with me today, I am sure that you can relate to feeling an emotional and physical discomfort in your body. But you also just could never quite get to the bottom of it. And the more you dived into it, the more confused you probably felt. Right? It's almost like you're jumping into a rabbit hole. You never know where it's going to lead you. And at which any given moment you're going to turn left and then it's turn right. And before you know it, you don't even know why and where you started. Now, your emotional body is part of your physical body, which can also hold pain and emotions. Now, this is your emotional body. And it can also give and receive information from your environment and people around you through what is called the energy and the space between us that we cannot see. Now, it is through these channels that we can communicate with each other, and also our body can also feel and sense and read information that is held in this field. And then this translates into sensations and also emotions and physical reactions in the body to help you to intuitively feel and sense your unseen environment. Now, your emotional body has an incredible power, right? Resources and also abilities. However, the more challenged your emotional body is with unresolved stress and trauma, the harder it will be to serve you. Right? It's harder to serve you as a clear channel of information in your life. Because in most cases now, its resources and the energy is drawn and focused to combating stress and trauma. Because your body is designed to be and feel harmonious. And it is also continuously trying to get back to its natural state. So, how do you know that something is traumatic and not just stressful? And can a stressful event be traumatic? Now, I'm bringing this topic because I can't tell you how many people have told me that they have never ever experienced a trauma. They've never been traumatized. And that is why healing work is not for them. But when you look at their life, especially their coping strategies, it will paint a different picture. Let me explain. Let's say, for example, that you had a great childhood. And yes, this actually does really exist for some people. Right? There are people who generally did have a good childhood and upbringing to a certain degree. But they continued to grow up in a more or less balanced way and didn't really experience anything significant to them. Firstly, there is a possibility, right? There is a possibility that due to their high threshold to endurance, right? To endure certain types of stress from the environment, that they probably did not feel traumatic by certain circumstances, whereas you on the other side of the spectrum might have felt traumatized by it. Now, another aspect is that they don't realize how long-term stress can actually become quite traumatic to the emotional body. Now, just because you didn't experience trauma through your cognitive system and having awareness of the incident doesn't mean that your emotional body hasn't suffered at some point in time. Let's say that you have a job that doesn't make you happy and you work really hard. Right now you struggle with insomnia because maybe you're drinking too much coffee. And your nervous system is now oversensitive because you are not exercising enough to discharge daily stress that you experience. Then at some point in your life, you could start to suffer from anxiety, right? Because now you're battling with depression as well because you're not happy in your job. And you maybe could start to feel stuck in your life. Now you continue to try to push through because your life on the outside looks picture perfect. Right? It's almost like you feel guilty for even thinking of complaining. And now you keep pushing forward. And the harder you start to push, the stronger your anxiety and your depression becomes. Right? You can even then revert to alcohol or whatever other substances it is to lift your mood. Right? To start to release yourself from the suffering and the exhaustion that your body's feeling. Because your body is perhaps maybe now not getting adequate rest and your life is not in balance. Then one day you start to feel trapped in your life. You start to feel suffocated and you start to have panic attacks. And this is a classic example of what I would call silent trauma. Now consciously you feel fine, but your body does not. Now your emotional body started to experience trauma internally. However, your mind kept telling you that you are okay, when in fact, your emotional body was suffering to the point where it started to break down in states of unresourcefulness to get your attention through panic attacks, right? And also through depression, through insomnia. And now, how you react to that, right? How you react after becoming aware of your body, trying to get your attention through panic attacks, can either lessen, right? It can either lessen the trauma that your emotional body is experiencing, or it can make it worse. And you continue to adapt to your anxiety by adding more and more coping mechanisms to suppress how you feel. Now, coming back to the topic of trauma, right? Trauma sets in when you have lost complete control over a situation that left you feeling powerless, unsafe, and out of control, and also extremely unresourceful. Meaning, you didn't know how to react resourcefully in that moment. Now, these states of experiences are also what your body feared the most, right? Your body is not in control, and then it activates a deep subconscious fear of dying. And when you feel unable to gain control back over a traumatic situation, then it becomes a traumatic memory. So as your subconscious mind now remembers everything that made it feel powerless and out of control, so that it can create a fear and anxiety in you every time when you are about to enter a similar situation or dynamic with someone. So sometimes your environment and a person or even a sound, like a smell, can trigger these strong conscious or subconscious memories. And your body then biochemically reacts as if though the old trauma is happening again. Now here's the frustrating part. Because in most cases, you don't actually consciously recall why you feel the way that you do. But you know 100% that what you are experiencing is stress. Right? And your environment might also not necessarily show any real threats to you. Right? It might not even validate how you feel in that moment of distress. Now, this happens when an implicit memory in the subconscious mind is triggered by stimulations from your environment. And now you will also not have a clear conscious recollection of the memory that caused you to feel this way. So, the only thing that you feel is how you emotionally and physically are now reacting to the triggered moment. And it is also for this reason that when I teach in my live events, I stay away from trying to access memories, as you have an extremely high chance of healing something that never happened. It's very easy to create a false memory based on how you feel, and then you assume that you could feel similarly if situation X took place, or if situation Y took place. Right? People could also be making suggestions, even based on how you feel, and suggest, well, based on your emotional symptoms, maybe you were abused, or maybe this, or maybe that happened. But look then at what you're doing. Right? You are now looking at an old subjective memory from the perspective of someone who is now not in that same frame of mind anymore. Very important. You see, just based alone on this concept, you can actually try to heal something that never happened. Also, by the time that you try to recall a memory, by 5 times, 50% of the story actually changed. Right? So the more you repeat it, the more the story actually changed. And now there is also a third chance as well, that what you are sensing is actually an ancestral memory. And then you try to heal a memory as well that never happened to you. However, you feel the emotions of the memory. Now, emotions will always lead you to a powerful healing, even if you are feeling an ancestral memory, right? Just the fact that you can feel it is enough, because that means that there is a biochemical reaction in your body, and that is what you want to work with and also heal. And everything before and after that is not as important. Now, having said that, let's also look at why your body didn't heal after the initial shock of a trauma. Meaning, the memory of the trauma remained and you continuously feel upset and traumatized by it or stressed by it, and it's affecting your quality of life. Now, your biological makeup is also made up of certain levels of thresholds towards certain types of stress that your environment can now trigger in you. Right? So now these thresholds, they depend on your upbringing. And also a big part of that depends on your ancestral predispositions and how sensitive or resilient they were towards certain types of stress in their life. Now, there's also a saying that goes that if it doesn't break you, then it makes you stronger. That's actually not true. That is not true in its purest form. If it doesn't break you, then you didn't successfully overcome the traumatic event. Then the only thing that's not going to happen is that you just became even more numb, more dissociated towards the stressful event. And of course, right, if you feel broken, then your sensitivity to the traumatic event is now more sensitive to possible future similar events. And because of that oversensitivity, there's a strong possibility that you now can actually overreact out of fear towards a traumatic or very stressful event. Now, once you have successfully overcome a fear, you actually build what's called resilience, right? You start to build resilience towards the fear, because once the fear has now passed, you felt confident, you felt safe and in control. If you had conscious access, consciously or actually subconsciously too, to inner resources to help you to combat or balance the stressful situation out. So this also means that your confidence is stronger towards the fear, and you feel safe and able to successfully overcome it if you were faced with it again. So now, how do you know that you have successfully overcome a traumatic event? It is when you had a conscious or a subconscious access to emotional states of mind that would allow you now to regain immediate control and also confidence after the traumatic event, because of prior unrelated experiences that you also successfully overcame, instead of feeling powerless and helpless towards those circumstances. The most powerful healing that you can ever have is by having a compassionate witness with you, with no judgment, right? Just giving you emotional and mental support without directly interfering with your healing process. And I mean this in the moment or just after a traumatic event. So now you might also ask the question, why can it be so hard to sometimes heal trauma? Let's look at that. Right, your body is designed to keep you safe. And now if you have a fear of feeling negative emotions from the past, or say for example reliving your trauma, then of course the body is going to sabotage your ability to heal it. But it's only trying to keep you safe. So the more you fear losing control of your healing, which normally is deep down more just the fear that's now being energized by your body, and also your body is biochemically reacting, and that's why it feels so strong in the form of a fear, right? So now as though it's really happening. So what now happens is what's kicking in here is your coping strategies, and now you avoid or sabotage your ability and also opportunities to heal. Now, normally a fear of reliving trauma, right? It seems to be also the biggest fear, and rightfully so. Because when you relive a traumatic memory, your subconscious mind can actually layer in new traumatic memories based on your present circumstances and what you also consciously and subconsciously is observed in that moment. And you are normally blissfully unaware of the associations, that new associations that you are making in that moment. All the while you think that you are healing one thing, you're actually creating a whole new different trauma point that would need to be healed at some point in time in the future. Now let's just also quickly just bounce on here secondary gains, right? This secondary gain starts to set in when you lack support and emotional resources within yourself to start to cope, right? To cope and to heal from stressful events. Now secondary gains also kick in when you experience a stressful event, or if you are in a situation that does not make you feel happy. However, you remain stuck in it, right? Almost feeling powerless to change your situation completely around. Despite the discomfort you feel, most of the time the reason for this is that because the powerlessness and the state that you feel of powerlessness that you felt towards your situation is now subconsciously starting to look for positive points within your negative circumstances, right? And you took now comfort in those small positive comfort points, right? As it gave you the emotional reassurance and comfort that you needed in one way or another. And even so, that you now remain in your negative, unhealthy circumstances. Now let's also tap briefly on coping mechanisms, right? This sets in when you start to feel unresourceful and also unable to bring balance back into your life, where you feel like you have lost control and balance of it, right? And you've exhausted most options available to you. And then the next alternative is to start to look for ways to suppress the stress and also to distract yourself from that. Now this is when a coping strategy is born. Now the kind of strategy that you adapt to can either be healthy or unhealthy. Now either way, a coping strategy in the sense of the bigger picture is not healthy, because the strategy is suppressing your inner voice and also your emotional body's inner voice. And it's also suppressing its ability to clearly communicate with you. Now you see, there is a very fine line between secondary gains and also coping mechanisms. Now secondary gains are formed when you find a small positive in a negative situation and you hold on to it so much, right, to that one small little positive aspect, that it actually sabotages now your ability to move away and to heal from your stressful circumstances. Now coping mechanisms, on the other hand, set in when you start to revert to some kind of behavior or action that gives you mental, physical, or emotional relief from the stress that you are experiencing in your life. And then you keep reverting back to these coping mechanisms because of the association of relief that you have formed with it. Now, in most cases, these coping mechanisms are not always healthy. Now, emotions are also an important aspect of healing. And it's also the very thing that we run away from, right? We try to hide from it. Though it's also one of the most important aspects of the emotional body that we need to heal, right? Your body stores trauma in a certain way, and it also releases trauma and emotions in a structured way. You know, it's not just ego or avoiding your spirituality by focusing on emotions and instincts. It's common sense. And so the reason why you are in pain, whether emotional or physical, is because of your physical body, right? And it's easy to disregard something when you don't fully understand it, because by fully understanding it, it's going to lead you to pain points in your life that you need to address, which is the very thing that we are running from, right? Because healing work has become too painful. And the reason why it is becoming painful is because you try to use a tool that is not necessarily in alignment with your healing journey. Now, we have so many modalities out there, and that is perfect. We need it. It is so important because it creates a flexibility for everyone to explore and to use what resonates with them. But it's also important that you recognize that what helps you and that what doesn't help you. Otherwise, you're just going to get stuck and your healing journey is going to become painful, right? So if sometimes it also causes you too much pain, and then it's always a sign that you are not on the right track. Emotions can be healed easily despite how intense they can also feel. And that is only if you relive it, which is not necessary. Your body has been through enough. Healing is meant to be gentle and graceful. And that brings me to the next part about the healing the emotional body, and that is emotions and instinctive responses. Now, when you feel an emotion, you know what you are feeling, right? You know when you are sad. You know when you're angry. And you also know when you feel unworthy, and when you feel shame, and when you feel anxiety. Now, these emotions are strong enough in order for your conscious awareness to be brought to them. And this is now when your emotional body has your attention. But how you react to your emotional body after the awareness has now set in will either help your body to heal from it, or your body will now move into what's called building and creating the coping mechanisms and the strategies around the emotional stress that we discussed earlier. Now, instinctive responses also always fire off without your conscious awareness. And they fire off first before emotions, right? Because emotions are felt when you've had a chance now, for example, to get a grasp on what it is that happened in your environment, especially after a traumatic event. And remember, as I also teach in my live events, emotions and instincts fire off together, which means that they wire together in your cognitive system and also in your emotional body. Now, this is also a core aspect in metaphysical anatomy, and one that I've been teaching for many years with great success. Now, wired emotions and instincts also lock in certain behavioral patterns in the emotional body. Hence also why certain emotional and physical challenges don't always heal as easily, because this aspect is not healed. So let go of digging into thoughts and beliefs and memories and needing to remember emotions. Emotions are already powerful enough. It's a very powerful gateway for you to allow yourself to accurately sense how you feel, because it also activates the emotional body, the cognitive mind, and also the implicit deep subconscious memories that are stored in it. And it spontaneously opens up these beautiful gateways to propel forward your healing without it needing to be painful. And you don't always have to dive into your shadow to heal, right? Healing is meant to be easy. It is meant to be fun. And when you start to take on approaches that is constantly going to, throwing pain into your face and causing you to have more fear and starting to fear healing work, your journey is going to become really hard. So you see, it's a matter of time before you start to have negative associations with healing work. And then before you know it, you subconsciously start to project the fear of emotional pain onto other modalities that could actually help you just as well. Now, this is not to say to avoid your shadow, just don't become powerless to it. Now, let's also move on to a few steps to heal trauma in the emotional body. Now, in this exercise, we are going to focus on the emotional trauma and also stress. So if you have physical pain there, then I have a different healing session for you, right? Which is called Healing Pain in the Body Guided Session. This specific topic is now to help you to release emotional stress that is stuck in the emotional body. Now, let's start the session. When you are ready, please get a pen and paper ready. So, now that you are ready, I will need you to write down some answers, as this is going to help you to have deeper insights through your healing journey. And just on a side note, this is not the full metaphysical anatomy technique, just to avoid confusion. However, it's going to give you a nice, fun, deep glimpse inside of it with wonderful results. So, step 1. What emotion do you feel challenged by? Emotions in this sense now is more what I would call core emotions. Example, anxiety, anger, sadness, irritation or frustration and so forth are not emotions in the healing sense in this specific case. They are, for example, final expressions of many different emotions that have now come together, creating a final ripple effect such as anger. Okay, so I invite you now. Okay, so ask yourself, how did I feel before I felt anxious or anger or sadness or irritation or frustration? If the emotion that you want to work on or the healing that you want to create is focused on an emotional symptom. We want to get more to the core emotion. So, how did I feel before I felt the feeling that you're feeling? So see if you can find at least 2 core emotions. And if you have trouble finding an emotion, then ask yourself, why do you know that you want to heal something in yourself today? right? What do you feel that convinces you that you are ready to shift something in your emotional body? Pause the video and then write down your answer. Step 2. When you feel these emotions, where in your body do you feel it? Where is the starting point for it? For example, you can feel your heart, for example, becoming really tense, or your stomach feeling very heavy, and so forth. Pause the video so that you can write down the answer. Step 3. When you feel these emotions, whose face do you see that you know? Or whose voice do you hear that you recognize? And you might also perhaps see someone that you know, or someone, it could be even someone from your ancestry that you do not directly know. And if you don't see someone here, then that is absolutely fine. Step 4. When you feel these emotions, how does your physical body respond? Right? Now we are looking for instinctive responses that fire off together with the emotions that you felt. Right? Do you feel like hunching over, which would, for example, now be the hiding instinct? It could be that you feel nauseous when you think of the emotions or feel the feelings, which would be the vomit instinct. Now here you could also be looking at either running away, feeling like an aggressive fighting instinct, or freeze as well. Step 5. Write your emotions on one side of the paper, and then on the other side of the same page, write your instinctive responses down. And pause the video so that you have time to write it down. Now that you have all your information, just scan through your notes and have an awareness of your answers before you start. So please take a minute to quickly do that and pause the video. So guys, until next time, stay connected with my YouTube channel. You can go to evetterose.com and subscribe to stay connected to even more awesome healings coming your way. Be the light that you are.
Hi guys, thank you for joining me, and remember to grab your copy of Metaphysical Anatomy on Amazon, 679 medical ailments. And I also wrote about the psychosomatic root causes of that, and I'm spoiling you because I even added key points for you to start looking at important questions that you can ask yourself to start improving your quality of life. And also remember to catch me on Instagram, Evette Rose, 1 with the digit 1, and Metaphysical Anatomy on our Facebook fan page. Bye guys!